every place has a history and a story. And part of that story here is this landscape. In fact, it's kind of the basis of the story. It's the pages in which the story is written.
Delaware's coastal landscape. Its story is written on pages of land and water and where they meet. For thousands of years, this dynamic has shaped this region, providing local plant and animal communities with an incredibly rich habitat in which to flourish. Now a mosaic of small towns, farms, and adjoining wetlands that eventually surrender to Delaware Bay, this landscape continues to share its diverse natural abundance with people as well, as it did ever since the time of the Native Americans.
Prior to contact, this was a paradise. I mean, you had an abundance of shellfish and aquatic resources, and then you had an abundance of the land-based resources with deer and turkey, and I mean, you had more than you could want.
The marshlands, the wetlands, both salt and freshwater marshes, provide a wealth of food resources that Native people made extensive use of. And these landscapes, pretty much any place there's a high dry spot around the edge of the marshes, we can almost certainly define an archaeological site there.
They were probably participating in the same traditional activities that their ancestors did, even though things were changing here along the Delaware Bay, where people were coming here from different countries and settling.
This rich landscape supported both natives and newcomers alike, and the narrow necks of land near navigable waters along the Delaware River and Bay were among the first to be settled. Samuel Loatman, an ancestor of Chief Coker and Sarah, successfully farmed this area in the mid-19th century. Using old census records and GPS technology, they were able to locate and finally walk the land where their great-great-grandfather raised 23 children on the rich resources of this bayshore landscape.
Our family is part of the generation of Lenapes that stayed here, and there's few of us that are still in Delaware. But I think the contribution that they made was to help maintain the land.
Maintaining the land included choosing the right spot to build one's house, ideally high ground or fast land that would not flood during dramatic storms or very high tides. The nearby Sutton House is a good example.
When they sited this house, this is on a little knoll, believe it or not. And on high water here, the water comes over the road, and when you look out, you see nothing but water.
With Delaware Bay so close and surrounded by wetlands, these fast land properties have been prized sites for local homesteads for centuries and are just as valued today.
Dates don't mean a lot, they're just numbers, you know what I mean? But to put the house in proper historical perspective, when George Washington was president, this house was about 50 years old.
Newlyweds 50 years ago, Tony and his wife Pat chose to move into the Sutton House and experience living in this rich natural landscape, along with those already at home in and well adapted to living off its natural abundance.
Jim Connor, the old fellow that lived here, was a trapper, and he would keep his turkles, as he called them, down in the basement. So you learn to take a flashlight and step carefully if you had to go down in the basement.
Snapping turtles were and are just one of the natural resources seasonally harvested in this rich wetland environment. Another is muskrat.
All these tidal marshes were pretty well full of muskrats. And during the winter, all the farmers and trappers trapped muskrats. Made good money at it. They often said that during the Depression, in a year or two, they would pay off a mortgage with just muskrats, selling hides. A farmer would catch maybe 2,000 rats a year. And it was about $2 a piece, so that was a big chunk of money at that time.
Besides being valued for their hides, muskrats were also a regular part of the diet of local families.
When I worked at the A&P store in Smyrna, we had a big case out in front of the store, and it was full of muskrats. And people would come in and buy 2 or 3 muskrats. It was very popular then. Now, if you see the muskrat, before you eat him, you wouldn't eat him. in the fur. He's ugly. And when he gets skinned, he's ugly, ugly, ugly. But great tasting. Muskrat, and the best gravy ever put on a potato come off a muskrat. But people today wouldn't touch one.
While the animals of the marsh provided income and sustenance during the winter, farming the nearby higher ground was how locals spent the warmer months.
The original family came from Staten Island and bought the farm from Indians, and then just from one family to the next up to where we are today. They did a lot of living off the land between, farming and trapping and vegetable gardens and everything else.
All the farms was maybe, I'm going to say 75 to 150 acres. And you grew a little bit of corn, a little bit of beans, this and that and the other. And
farming was productive but hard work. Until the late 1940s, the area's lack of electricity and remoteness meant a very different life, even for those of school age.
Of course, all the town kids, they wait and play ball and this and that and play tough. Well, we never had none of that going on. We'd have to come home and milk cows or feed the pigs and goats or whatever's around there, and wasn't any running water or nothing like that.
Yet the isolation and the surrounding nature also offered children unique experiences.
It was a wonderful life for the kids. With a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of bugs, and this was where we lived and this was home. And we were basically very happy. The kids did trap, especially our last daughter. She really took to trapping. I don't think she was that successful. Uncle Jim helped her out a time or two, putting a muskrat he had already caught in her trap, which made her very pleased.
The Bayshore landscape also provided residents and visitors with plenty of seasonal recreational activities.
My mother lived west of Clayton, and I've heard her say many times on the weekend they would drive a horse and buggy from Clayton to Woodland Beach to come down to the beach.
Now a lot quieter. Woodland Beach was once a recreational mecca that drew thousands of visitors from as far away as Philadelphia. During the summer, the steamer Clyde would drop off a load of fun seekers daily.
They would have anywhere from 75 to 100 people on it. And they came down there, and of course they scattered all over the beach. Of course they had a dance hall down there, and a crab house, and a beer joint.
There was even a train that brought passengers from Smyrna and the surrounding area.
The Smyrna and Delaware Bay Railroad Company. It came north edge of Smyrna, like where Glenwood Avenue is now, and then through Smyrna Landing, they went on down to the beach.
But the same natural forces that created the Bayshore beaches and marshes also periodically took its toll, radically transforming the entire region's landscape and the communities found there.
There was a huge storm in 1878, and this wall of water came up the mouth of the Delaware Bay, and it inundated this whole area. And the hotel that was up at Collins Beach, they found the cupola 3.5 miles inland. That's how much water came through.
But along with dramatic weather events, there also were and are slow-working natural forces that continue to reshape this Bayshore landscape.
There's a monument on the farm just before Collins Beach down this road on the Liston farm that is the dividing line between the river and the bay. It's the official dividing line. And supposedly they've moved the monument 2 or 3 times over the years because it keeps being further out. And, so the shoreline's getting eaten away. So wherever Collins Beach Hotel was it's probably well out into the water now.
As the area's habitat has changed, so too have its natural resources, prompting residents and visitors to adapt to the evolving abundance.
In the 70s and 80s, this was called the goose hunting capital of the world, right here in little old Smyrna and Woodland Beach area.
Changes to the wetlands, protections offered by the National Wildlife Refuge, and adjacent farm fields now drew thousands of waterfowl to winter in the area. A number of successful hunting lodges and clubs sprang up, offering local residents another source of income.
You would see a lot of the guides were also watermen. They would crab right up until the fall, and then they would become guides for geese and waterfowl.
Well, in order to provide yourself with hopefully enough annual income, you had to learn many different facets of the water business, whether it be crabbing, fishing, eeling, oystering. I incorporated waterfowl hunting with mine through the fall and early winter period because the bay can be quite nasty.
One of the more popular hunting operations was the M&M Hunting Lodge. Owned by the Matarese family, this business and others like it introduced a new group of visitors to the natural abundance of the area and to those with expert knowledge of its landscape and resources.
If you took customers for the first time, they very seldom remembered our names, but they would remember our dogs' names. And that would be my dog's name, of course, was Buck, and I want to hunt with that fellow that has Buck. And that's the way it went. A lot of times they knew our dogs' names a lot better than what they knew ours.
In 1989, the lodge property was purchased by the state and now serves to educate the public through the recently dedicated Aquatic Resource Education Center. But the center, its ponds, wetlands, and trails are simply fresh pages upon which will be written the next chapter in the story of this ever-changing natural landscape. And for those fortunate enough to be descended from the area's earlier storytellers, this landscape, however it evolves, will continue to evoke feelings and connections that run deeper than words.
This is actually my first time ever being here after having spent a lifetime of my mother driving across the causeway into Woodland Beach and saying, "My grandfather was born over there by those trees." So now we're over here by those trees, and I'm really excited to have this experience.
Anytime I come even close to where Samuel Lopeman used to live, I kind of feel and sense his spirit and the energy. I know it looked much different then than it does today. Must have been a busy time, a busy life, managing a farm. But every time I come here, I do feel a certain level of peace and comfort somehow, knowing that he was here.